Assalamu alaikum. Dear students, today we are going to talk about a bit small but a very important topic of sociolinguistics, which is code switching. And before I start the topic, I would like to remind you that if you have any problem or if something is not understandable for you from these slides or the lecture which we are discussing today, you will be provided textbook material which I think already has reached you, and even when we start our Google classes, when your classes commence, we can talk about your difficulties in detail. So let's begin with the I will start with the definition of code switching, and before starting it, although the topic or the content of bilingualism has already been discussed and will be part of today's session, but I will start after telling you that code switching is a phenomenon which is only possible if you are a bilingual or if you are a multilingual. So code is language, and switching means to alternate or to change from one thing to another. So when we talk about code switching, it will be to shift from one language to another. So the bilingual and multilinguals, when they are usually conversating and they share the languages which they both are, or more than two people are bilingual or multilingual of, then they can switch from one language to another. So now I will start with the formal definition of code switching from your slide. This is code switching is when a speaker alternates between two or more languages, and these languages, in the brackets I will discuss what is there, that these can be languages or dialects or varieties of language. When a speaker alternates between two or more languages in one conversation, a situational change in the value of one of the variables that define a domain may result in code switching. So the first two lines are informal ones, which we have been talking about, that code switching is when there are two speakers or more than two, and the speakers switch from, or they change from one language to another during a conversation, and the formal one, which is within commas, will be more comprehensible to you when we finish this lecture. So the things like domain and variables will be, and the situational change will be more comprehensible to you when we finish this conversation or this lecture. So now we start with the question that who uses code switching. Code switching occurs mostly in the bilingual and multilingual communities. Speakers of more than one language are known for their ability to code switch or mix their language during their communication. As Aronoff and Miller indicate, many linguists have stressed the point that switching between languages is a communicative option available to a bilingual member of a speech community, just as switching between styles or dialects is an option for the monolingual speakers. So the monolingual speakers only have the option to switch between dialects if they know more than one dialect, or they can switch between their styles, which is formal or informal, but if a person or the persons are bilingual or multilingual, then they have this opportunity, then they have this facilitation, then they have this advantage that they can at their discretion, or they can with their will, or whenever they want, they can switch from one language to another. So when do they switch, and how do they switch, and why do they switch, will be discussed later in this conversation as well. So far we only have been discussing this issue, that, or this thing, that code switching is to shift from one language to another during a conversation, and this is only an advantage which is available to the people who share their languages, who are bilingual or multilingual, and when they conversate, they can easily switch from one language to another, depending on some factors which are coming ahead. So I now move to the next slide. So yes, here we have the topic, that what is the difference between code switching and code mixing. So code switching is to switch from one language to another, because we say that code is the language, so to switch from one language to another is code switching. And when we talk about code mixing, this is the mixing of language. So these are the two things which are a little bit confusing, and most of the people usually mix these two things together. But here we will see that what is the difference. Code switching happens when the speakers of a conversation, when two interlocutors, when the participants of a conversation totally switch from one language to another, but which means that totally the sentences they are uttering, or the topic they are discussing, they totally discuss that topic in the language they have been shifted to, or they are shifted to. But in code mixing, there is usually the mixing of vocabulary items. Code mixing is very common. Code switching is mostly common when the people are a bit intellectual, when they or they intellectual in the languages. I would say that they are totally conversant with those 2 or 3 languages they are talking in. But when we talk about code mixing, then it's not necessary that the person is totally conversant or competent in the second or foreign language which he or she is mixing in the language. The example is all around us. We can see that all the people around us can easily mix English in their Urdu, or they can easily mix Punjabi in their daily lives. So English is the language, is the foreign language or the second language for some people, so they easily mix English words in their daily life, either that is Punjabi or that is Urdu. So I will again explain that code switching is the shift of languages, when you are using a language and then you shift to the other language and then you totally discuss that topic in that language. But when we talk about mixing, we are using one language, but we are mixing some vocabulary items, we are mixing some words from the foreign language or the second language. So it's not necessary that you are totally conversant and competent in that language. I think that it will be clear to you now. Now we see example of code switching. Two people conducting a business in English in Tanzania might suddenly switch to Swahili, or if they are fellow members of the same ethnic or linguistic subgroup, to a local vernacular when the topic of conversation changes from business uh, to more personal matters. So if the people are doing some business conversation in English and they are all from Tanzania, we are talking about an example in from Tanzania. So the business people who are talking in English, if all of them have Swahili as their language, their L1, or if they share some other vernacular of their country, they can shift, or they can opt for Swahili or their some of their local dialect or their local vernacular if they want to talk about some other thing, if they want to talk about their personal matters. So they prefer to use English for their business conversation, but when they want to talk about something which are some things which are not related to business, which are more personal, or which are more which can be related to something like politics or the current issues of their country or some other thing, then they can switch to their L1. But the condition is the same, that they have to share the language. The same kind of code switching has been noted in many bilingual communities, like in India, between English and Hindi, in Bengali, in Tamil, or one of the many other local languages. So it's not only in Swahili, it can happen anywhere. It can also happen in Pakistan. Usually if our business people or any sort of if there is any sort of formal meeting, that can be academic, that can be business meeting, or any sort of any other sort of meeting, then if we share the languages, if we know English, if we know Urdu, and if we know Punjabi at the same time, we can switch to Urdu or to Punjabi according to the situation. So code switching depends upon three things, or there are three factors on which code switching is dependent. The first thing is the topic. I would prefer, I think, that the order should be situation first. It depends on the situation or domain. We have talked about domain, topic, and person in bilingualism as well, but with such different terms. There we used domain instead of situation, and we used participants instead of person. But this is something which is similar to the topic we discussed in bilingualism, or the factors we discussed in bilingualism. So I will start with situation. So what is the situation here? Whether the situation in which one is communicating is formal or informal. Yes, if the situation is formal or informal, it would determine which language the bilinguals or multilinguals will choose. So in the situations like meetings, or in the classroom, or in any sort of formal gathering, you will choose to use the formal language. So in our context, perhaps we will choose to use English or Urdu. So the third example is picnic. If we are on a picnic, then we would definitely choose a language which is a bit more informal, or like that. So the topic you are talking about also determines which language you use. Preferably, if you are, uh, I would first read the lines here. Whether topic of conversation is formal or informal, for example, study, business, daily life, discussion. Yes. So here in this example, we see that study and business are the formal ones, while daily life discussions, or if we are um, uh, playing a game, or if we are um, talking with friends or talking with siblings, those will be the topics which are less formal. So if we are studying, or if we are teaching, or if we are as a student asking questions from a teacher, then we will choose the formal language. And if we are in the daily life any other informal daily life situation, then we will choose the language which is not formal for us. So the third factor is the person you are talking to. So the person you are talking to also makes us switch the language. So if we are in a class and the teacher is talking in English to the students, and suddenly there comes an attendant or a peon with some message from the principal, and he or she talks to the teacher will respond in the language which that peon or the attendant can understand. So he or she might switch from English to Urdu or Punjabi. So these are the three factors, and the situation is also the situation is always not like this. Sometimes it happens that the person you talk to always in English, for example, you always talk to your teacher in English, you ask questions in English, you conversate in English for your academic or your study purposes. But if you see your teacher in a picnic, if you go to a picnic with your teacher, then it's not compulsory that you use English there. So sometimes with the situation, the um switching options also change. So these are three things which um, we can say that which together determine which language you opt for, which language you choose to use in that particular context. So topic, situation, and the person or the participant you are talking to, or the participant of your conversation, these three things together are interrelated, and these three things affect one another when you choose to use a language. The next slide is about reasons of code switching. So I will read and see what reasons are here mentioned. There are a number of possible reasons for switching from one language to another. Three are described below. To fulfill a need, a speaker who may not be able to express herself in one language might switch to another to compensate for the deficiency. As a result, the speaker may be triggered into speaking in the other language for a while. This type of code switching tends to occur when the speaker is upset, tired, or distracted in some manner, or when they are less fluent in one language. So the first reason to code switch is to fulfill a need. Sometimes when we are not so expressive, or when we are not so competent in the foreign language or in the second language, then we to express ourselves, sometimes we don't find words, we don't find some appropriate sentences or vocabulary items to express ourselves. At that time, we or the person who is not able to express himself or herself will opt to switch to his or her first language, or L1, to express his or her feelings, and then he or she can come back to the second or foreign language they are conversating in. The second topic is to express solidarity. The second heading would be the right words, I think. To express solidarity. Switching also commonly occurs when an individual wishes to express solidarity with a particular social group. Rapport is established between the speaker and the listener when the listener responds with a similar switch. So it's something which we have discussed in covert prestige, that in a special bond, or in a special group of friends or any sort of relation, when you are in a group and you want to show your solidarity with that group, you want to express, you are not at loss of words, you are not at loss of anything else, but just to express your intimacy with that person or with that group of persons, you switch to your L1 just to show that we share this language, or we can also talk in that language. It happens mostly when you are not in your community, but you are out of that community, you are out of your country where the people are speaking different languages. Then you are sitting in a group, and then you suddenly switch to your L1, which certain people from that area can speak. Then it shows, its purpose is more clear, that you are showing your solidarity with group, that aha, we have the same L1 and I am speaking that L1, and I am expecting that you respond in that L1, and in this way they think that the bond of solidarity is enhanced. So reasons for code switching. Number 3, to exclude others. Yes, this is exactly the same thing which I was talking about, that when you are in a situation when there are many people and you just want to show your solidarity to certain group or few people or one person, then in that case you can switch to your L1. So certainly the same thing is here in this heading, that when you switch to that language, when you switch to L1, which you are only sharing with certain people, but the other people present at that time there cannot understand that language, then you are excluding those people from there. The first purpose of this thing was just to show your solidarity with those people, who share their L1 with you, but in this case you purposefully sometimes can exclude those people who don't understand your language. In that case, you use your L1 because you only want to be understood by the people you share your L1 with. So I will read from here now for a particular example. Code switching may also be used to exclude others from a conversation who do not speak the second language. For example, who do not speak the second language, I think I will correct it. Yes, for example, if two people in an elevator in an English speaking place spoke Spanish, then not only would the others on that elevator who do not speak Spanish would be excluded from the conversation, but also a degree of comfort and intimacy would be established between the Spanish speakers, due to the fact that not all those present in the elevator can listen to their conversation. So this is probably the same thing which we have been discussing. So here the author has taken the example of Spanish language that if there are some Spanish people in an English speaking community, for example, they can be in England, they can be in Canada, or they can be in US, and the Spanish people suddenly start speaking Spanish. So at that time what will happen, that the people around them will be excluded from the conversation. So what the Spanish people are speaking will be only restricted or confined to them. So some more reasons for code switching can be to hide fluency or memory problems. Yes, you can switch to your L1 just to hide that you are deficient of the second language, deficient of words or deficient of sentences in the second or foreign language, to make switching from informal to formal situation. So sometimes if you can even change the situation, you can even feel the people formal or informal just by the shift of language. If you are talking in Punjabi or Urdu, you can suddenly start speaking English and you can make the environment more formal, and you can bring the people to be you can give them a signal to be formal, that now something formal is going to start. In the same way, if you shift from English to your local language, then it can be a signal that now the formal part is done and now we are coming to the informal discussion. So the third one is something which is that you use Western language to under the influence of Western culture, that you want to show that I am from a prestigious class, I am a follower of West, I am more educated, I am more prestigious, I know the prestigious language. Then you shift, you can make shifts from one language to another. You can switch from your local language to English just to show that you are more. Yes, here we are done with the topic, and here are the references for the topic we have discussed, and I will again tell you that you will find text on this material from where you can understand the topics and the examples and the references in detail. And if you still will face some questions or difficulties, we can discuss those things through our online classes. Okay, Allah Hafiz.